Welcome to another episode of the Boba Joe Show.
Greetings, everybody. Hope you're all ready to watch this episode in spooky vision.
Yep, Tunny Vision's been retired till next month. This is definitely Creepo-Rama. It's got smell-o-vision, creeper-vision, scare-o-vision, all of those built in.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about a real horror show today. Of course, I'm talking about Dr. Pepper, a horrific drink that
Yes.
nobody should consume. The only creatures that can consume Dr. Pepper are majestic tigers. The only creatures that should
100% true.
consume Dr. Pepper are majestic tigers.
Yeah, that's like behind the scenes production image or whatever photo, and like I hadn't even seen it before, and like I just went, "It's too good not to use that."
Yeah.
And the
Brilliant.
double head effect of the mask of the two heads is hilarious.
Will Shatner, he's looking well.
Yeah, he is indeed. But yeah, it's our Halloween month. We're already well into October. We had our extended pilot season with Castillo. Had to get in there and get his licks in with that samurai sword last week, but now into our John Carpenter horror month.
Yeah, we could do with Castile on our side to
Yes.
deal with this week's foe. Michael Myers, if he's coming at you with the kitchen knife, you want Castile just to come around the corner with that samurai sword and chop him down. But yes, folks, definitely if you haven't caught it, and if you are a fan of Miami Vice, check out last week's episode in Castile. It was great fun. Love chatting about it. That episode, fantastic stuff.
Yep. That man
But,
can scare you just with a look, just staring at you, stare you down.
we're getting away from the bright lights and sunshine of Miami,
Yep.
and we're getting into the depths of darkness now with John Carpenter's Halloween, kicking off a month of JC, praising our master JC.
That's right. Our horror master and savior.
There'll be a couple of individuals in today's show that we'll be seeing in future shows coming up, because JC has a habit of recasting or reusing the same actors over and over. You get to know a few of these faces.
Yeah.
But Halloween, man, it's one of those movies. It's one of those, the most, probably has to be in like the top 3 most iconic horror movies of all time. And
Yeah. Like everyone knows like Halloween, and like, I mean, if you're an 80s person, Nightmare, Friday the 13th, and sometimes it gets wrongly called like the first slasher, but there was several prototypical slashers in the 70s, and one of which directly inspired this one. And but it did become the most iconic, definitive one as far as the 80s going forward that other films aped, and Friday the 13th became a direct kind of like the bootleg Halloween. It's like, quick, we need our own, maniac from another company who goes around slashing people. And
yeah, Michael Myers, he doesn't do the hack and slash. He does the grab and stab. He grabs you and then he stabs you.
That's his action feature.
But yeah, we see this nice opening shot here of the house in Haddonfield, Illinois. We see a couple of horny teenagers making out on the sofa. They're being watched, so we can't see who's watching them just yet. And they run upstairs to get it on. And it must be like the quickest of quickies, because they literally go upstairs. You hear a bit of a shuffle, and then next thing the dude's coming back downstairs, putting his shirt back on.
Yeah, that or they got tired and changed their mind, and it's like, oh, I'm taking it off.
Yeah. See you tomorrow, But so we see the young lad walking out the door and leaving the house, and next thing we see from a kind of point of view shot of a of a figure wandering into the kitchen. He opens the kitchen drawer, he takes out a knife, he goes upstairs, he looks on the ground, he sees a mask on the floor, he picks it up and puts it on. He walks into the room where the girl is sitting naked, brushing her hair after her 5 seconds of fury that she had with her fella, and she turns around just to see this figure with a knife approaching her, and she's like, "Oh, Michael!" And then we got a very psycho styled stabbing shot where we literally see a lot
Yeah,
up and down and up and down.
and that was another big influence on this film too, that John Carpenter's acknowledged, was like,
It turns into a bloody affair. We see the naked girl on the ground. She's covered in blood, and the figure, he walks down the stairs and out onto the street just as the car is pulling up, and two uh, people get out of the car. They're a couple. They walk up to the figure holding the knife, who we see is actually a little boy dressed as a clown, and they take off his mask and they're like, "Michael, Michael." And this is our first look at Michael Myers, the star of the Halloween franchise. This is childhood Michael Myers. He's after doing his first murder. We're all very proud of him here, except not really, because he's about to be institutionalized for the foreseeable future. So yeah, that's our opening to Halloween. And yeah, like I was saying, a very psycho-esque shot of the knife, going. You don't actually see the blade entering the victim. You hear the stabbing sound, and you see the blade going up and down, and you see the bloody aftermath. But it's yeah, it's very, very reminiscent of Psycho, and of course the reveal of it being a young boy as well makes it all the more disturbing. So
yeah, it's a really strong opening, and we get the iconic minimalist piano score too, with those minimal beats. It's like really eerie, and it was so simple, but it became like so iconic. You hear those little piano bars now, and you instantly know like know what it is. It's Halloween.
anything to do with kids, usually it's like a for horror movies, it's always a good go-to to freak people out. Like if it's a child doing something scary or barbaric, it just makes it
Yeah,
that
like
little bit more
eating bowls of
eerie.
corn, running in cornfields. That's scary if you've got kids doing that.
Yeah, yeah, freaky, freaky stuff. So we transition to the present day, and we see Dr. Loomis and a nurse. They're traveling to a maximum security mental institution. They're actually going to pick up an adult Michael Myers to bring him before some type of judge who, Dr. Loomis is hoping is going to pretty much sign off on committing him to life in an institution, because he believes he's too dangerous to ever, walk free. And as they're driving to this institution, the chain smoking nurse who's driving with him, she's like, "Oh, is this guy really as dangerous as they say? How dangerous could he possibly be?" And Dr. Loomis is like, he's more of a monster than a man, essentially, and we're going to have him doped up with Thorazine just to make sure he's docile enough to even transport to the trial. And don't dare underestimate him. He's very, very dangerous. And as he's explaining this to her, they're driving. It's in the middle of a very, very bad thunderstorm, and it's raining. They can barely see out the windows of the car. And as they come up on the institution, they notice that a lot of the patients seem to be running around outside beyond the fence in the middle of this thunderstorm. And the nurse remarks that this is quite unusual. Do they just let the inmates run around the asylum in the middle of the night? And upon pulling up, Dr. Loomis, he runs out of the car and tries to call through to the guard station. But as this is happening, a figure emerges from the darkness and jumps on top of the roof of the car, and he breaks through the window and he pulls the nurse out and hijacks the car. And that figure is actually Michael Myers himself. He's escaped the mental institution on coincidentally the same night that Dr. Loomis was coming to pick him up, and now he's hijacked the car and he's driving off into the night. So that's our first glimpse
Yeah,
of
and it
adult
plays up
Michael Myers.
several urban myths too, like one about um the teenagers in the car and the guys on top of the car, and the opening where they're upstairs and the killer's already in the house and you don't know they're in the house. And I mean the other variation of that is the killer's in the house and they've got the telephone, which they didn't scream and all that. But all those were like urban myths going back to the 70s. Well, the man with the hook for a hand, he's scratching the cars.
Yeah, yeah, he's hiding in the back. You didn't check in the back, and now he's going to get you when you're driving down the road.
Yeah, but they're all
But
like
it's
playing up fears and boogeyman.
this is our first proper this was our first proper look at Dr. Loomis as well, who's a fantastic character played by Donald Pleasance, fantastic actor. We spoke about him in Escape from New York when we reviewed that
Yeah,
movie a few months
he was a
ago.
president. That
That's correct. Yes, he was the president. Not a very likable character in that movie, but he's a lot more likable in this movie. He's a real hero here in Halloween, the Good Doctor. So we cut to present day Haddonfield, and seems like a nice quiet town. Of course, it's Halloween, so it's very autumnal, and yeah, nice wide streets, white houses. Seems all very pleasant and quiet. And we see young Laurie Strode, played by the Scream Queen herself, Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's kind of your typical nerdy girl next door type of character. She's on her way to school and she's greeted by the neighbor child Tommy, who she's going to be babysitting, later on for Halloween. But yeah, Laurie, we get the impression she's right from the get go, she's just a little bit of a square, like she's carrying her books, and she just looks a little bit kind of a little bit more formal than some of the other ladies we're going to be
yeah,
introduced to shortly in this movie.
bit more Marge Simpson.
Yeah, young Marge Simpson here on her way to school.
Yeah, more conservative. As that's our other direct link to Psycho, of course, too, because she was the daughter of Janet Leigh.
That's right. And without getting too far ahead of ourselves, because we will be covering it at another time, when we get to the fog, we're going to get to see mother and daughter in the same movie. We're going to see Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis,
Oh, is she in
appear.
there? I didn't know she was in there.
She's
I haven't
there.
watched it in
She's
that many
there.
years. I'll be watching it again next week.
But we'll get there. Don't worry, folks. So
I know
yeah.
that Catwoman's in the fog.
Yes, yes, she is from the
On
animated
the radio is
series.
that voice.
So we see Laurie and Tommy. They're on their way walking to school, and Laurie heads off on her own way, and we see that he's being watched by a shadowy figure who we only see from over the shoulder point of view. Of course, it's Michael Myers, and we're dying to get a look at what he actually looks like, though we won't be seeing that just yet. So we cut back to Dr. Loomis. He's in a real panic. He's with like the head of the psychiatric institution. There'd been a power outage the night before during the storm. Big escape. Lots of inmates were rounded up, but of course the most important inmate and the most dangerous one has escaped, and that's Michael Myers. And the head of the institution, he's just one of these typical bureaucratic douchebags. He's like, oh look, don't worry, the local police will find him. He couldn't have gotten that far. I doubt he's gone back to Haddonfield because that's over 150 miles away. And like, how could
Yeah,
he get there? He's not going to be able to drive there. And Dr. Looms is like, well, he was
could
able to
have gone
drive
on a
last
bus.
night. Like, he hijacked my car and drove it away. Like he can drive. Why are you playing this down as nothing? Um, but yeah, the guy is totally nonchalant about it. So it's up to Dr. Loomis to take matters into his own hands and to travel to Haddonfield and hopefully get some help from local law enforcement to deal with this issue himself. And of course, we see a little bit of Laurie in class, and she's doing a bit of writing, a bit of daydreaming, and we see across the street once again she's being watched by a shadowy figure driving a car, keeping a close eye on her.
Why doesn't Jason drive cars on Friday the 13th? That's the real question. Probably end up driving them into a lake.
Well, Jason is one of those guys who he's probably quicker walking than doing anything else because
He teleports around it.
One moment he's like half an acre away from you, and then you turn around again, and he's right on you, chopping your head off.
They did that in those that online video game thing where it's like the killer versus the kids running away, and he basically just teleports around the map. I feel like as we go on to the next bit of scene here, like the Loomis and the other bloke in the suit. If you were doing like live action The Simpsons, that could be like Skinner and Chalmers.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The suits of the hair. Yeah.
I'll never be able to unsee that now.
Yeah.
And we see here poor Tommy, who we saw earlier. Now he's been picked on by the other children in school. They're picking on him and telling him that the boogeyman's going to come and get him. And of course, he's a total dork, so he takes it really badly, and he's like crying as they're kind of like going, oh, the boogeyman, the boogeyman, the boogeyman. Instead of just telling them to fuck off or whatever, he gets really upset about it. So of course, because they're all little twats, the kids who are bullying them, they just run away laughing. And as one of them runs around the corner, he runs into Michael Myers. He just grabs him by both shoulders in a really kind of tense moment, and then he just kind of slowly lets him go as the child runs away. So for a moment there, we thought we were going to see adult Michael do his first kill, and thankfully that little child doesn't know how lucky he was that day just to accidentally bump into Michael Myers and live to tell the tale. But he's
lucky.
as we can see, and as I made fun of earlier on, like he's quite the accomplished driver for someone who's been institutionalized his whole life.
So somewhere there's a prequel where it's just him driving.
Yeah, it's him watching like instructional
just like
videos,
driving lessons, playing GTA, doing all the car missions.
As we see, like he's kind of car stalking little Tommy here, but he's keeping control of the car while keeping his distance, maintaining control. He's not speeding up or drawing attention to himself. Like he's really nailed this whole driving business, in a matter of like 12 hours or so, or however long he's actually been free. And we cut back to Dr. Loomis, who's on the trail of Michael Myers, and he's on a payphone. He's trying to ring ahead to the Haddonfield Police Department to warn them of what's coming their way. And as he's on the phone, he notices that there's a truck that seems to have been rolled in off the ditch. And as he goes down to inspect it, he finds the garments that belong to Michael Myers. They're kind of his mental institution kind of robes, the kind of white fatigues that he would have been dressed up in. And so he knows that Michael has been in this area. He's changed clothes. He seems to have stolen kind of overalls from a person he's killed who this truck has belonged to. And Loomis, he knows it's him instinctively, and he knows he's on his way to Haddonfield. So he continues on his quest to track him down. Yeah, we're going to meet a few of the other ladies in this movie. Laurie's friends. There's Annie and Lindsay, I believe, are their two names, and I always get them mixed up. I think Lindsay is the girl with the like blue bows in her hair, and Annie is the dark-haired one who is also in The Fog. So here's another girl that's going to be in The Fog again. So, but yeah, this scene with the three girls walking home from school really emphasizes just how kind of square Laurie is compared to
Yeah,
all the other kind of
like they could have
teenage
been
girls.
hanging out in Greece.
Oh yeah, because Annie and Lindsay, they're talking about their boyfriends and how they're going to get up to some shagging later on when they're babysitting, and whereas Laurie's very timorous and quiet, she's worried about the fact that she forgot to bring her chemistry book home from school because she won't be able to study over the weekend, and they're kind of making fun of her. And Lindsay, she's a total like vapid airhead. She's like, why do you even need books anyway? I forget all my books. Books are totally stupid. She's one of these type of characters. And as this kind of banter is going on between the ladies, we see once again there's a car driving slowly on the other side of the street, and it's at first it's kind of just driving past, watching them from behind, but then it speeds up a little bit to drive alongside them. And Annie, she turns around and she actually thinks it's one of the local boys that they know from school, and she's like, "Oh, speed kills, jerk." And then the car just puts on the brakes and sits there for a moment before driving off. So I was going to say she doesn't know how lucky she was, but she's not going to be too lucky later on, so I better not say that. But yeah, they kind of that was their first encounter with Michael Myers, and they didn't even realize it, and they almost really annoyed him by calling him a jerk. So we see as they're walking along, Lindsay, she gets to her house, so she walks in, and it's just Annie and Laurie. And Laurie, as she's walking up the street, and Annie's kind of looking the other way, Laurie notices that there's a figure in a white mask and overalls kind of looking out from behind a hedge, and she gets spooked by
Nothing
this. And
suspicious about that.
she says it to Annie. Of course, when Annie looks, she can't see anybody. She runs up, and there's nobody there. She makes fun of Laurie and kind of teases her, saying it was actually the guy from school that she fancies that was hiding behind the bush, and just tries to embarrass her a little bit. So Annie ends up going into her own house, and Laurie starts walking down the street to her own house, and she accidentally walks into Annie's father, who I believe is the local sheriff, the local Haddonfield sheriff. So she gets a little bit startled. She's having an awful day, Laurie. She keeps on seeing strange shadowy figures and frightening herself. But Annie's dad, the sheriff, he's like, "Oh, Laurie, it's Halloween. We're all entitled to at least one good scare." So they kind of laugh it off, and she goes her way and he goes his. And we see when she gets back home, she's kind of unpacking her school bag and up in her bedroom, and she looks out the window, and once again, as she looks in her back garden, the shadowy figure in the white mask is standing in the back garden among the laundry blowing on the washing line, and of course when she looks again, he's instantly disappeared. So he's got a bit of that Jason magic, as well, where he can
Yeah.
just, now I'm over here, now I'm over here.
And in broad daylight too, like, and there's plenty of dark scenes in various horror films, but this is like absolutely bright as day, and it's like just hiding in plain sight.
And those are kind of almost the freakiest moments in the movie, when it's just him standing out in the open, or even doing something normal like driving a car, like in broad daylight. It's yeah, I'm sure it's like everybody's worst nightmare to be fucking stalked by somebody and like tracked to your home, watched from the bushes, especially if you're like a teenage girl alone in the house.
Yeah.
Like, this is a horrific scenario. So the phone rings and she picks it up, and at first there's nobody speaking, so she hangs it up, and then it rings again, and this time it's Alice. And once again she's making fun of her, and Alice is trying to convince Laurie that she should take on the responsibility of babysitting the kids that Alice was supposed to be babysitting, so she can go shag her boyfriend later on, basically. And of course, Laurie, because she's such a prude and a square, she's like, okay, I'll mind an extra child that I'm not getting paid to mind, just so you and your boyfriend can go have fun. So Yeah, she agrees. Yeah, per Laurie. She's such a doormat, you know.
Yeah.
No way she's gonna survive this movie. My money is on Alice or Lindsay surviving. So yeah, she agrees anyway to go along with Alice's plan, and Alice goes to pick her up. She hops in her very nice car, and before they get round to going where they're going, they have time for a quick joint in the car. They're going to smoke a quick split. Of course, Laurie's all like holding it, like ooh, but she still manages to take a few puffs, so she's not like a total square. And we now cut to the local cemetery where the groundskeeper is showing Dr. Loomis the location of the grave of Judith Myers, the mother of Michael Myers. And when they get there, or is Judith Myers the mother, or is she the sister? I can never remember. She's dead
I'm not
anyway.
sure.
And but they get to the spot and the gravestone is gone. It has been removed from the ground. And of course, you know, Dr. Loomis, he knows who moved it. But the local groundskeeper seems to think, ah, no, it's just kids playing a prank for Halloween because, you know, that's a totally normal prank for young kids to
Yeah,
do is like to
those
pull a heavy
Hulk strength
gravestone.
kids that can lift
Yeah.
up solid stone.
So yeah, this is our first instance of Dr. Loomis just having trouble with the locals, trying to convince them that there's a serious problem heading their way. The groundskeeper is a funny dude as well. Like when they're walking up to the grave, and you know they're obviously been talking about what happened years ago when Michael Myers killed Judah Myers, and the groundskeeper's like, oh, you know, this type of thing happens in small towns all over the place. You know, 15 years ago, I know this guy. He came home one night after work. He had dinner. He kissed his wife and kids goodbye. And then next thing, and before he can finish the story, you know, Dr. Loomis interrupts him like to talk a bit more about Michael. But it's just I always wondered like what was the rest of that story. I think he
Yes,
also
so,
mentioned he might have mentioned something about the guy grabbing a hacksaw or something like that. I was like, whoa, what was going to happen here?
I checked the
So
cheat
yeah,
sheet, so the grave was the mother.
mother. Okay, so Judah Myers is Michael's mommy,
Yeah.
and yeah, we cut back then again to Annie and Laurie in the car smoking a sneaky doobie, having having a wee split on their drive.
Some of the doobie doobie doos.
Yeah, they're gonna need to feast on some Scooby snacks later
Yeah,
on
sure.
to alleviate the munchies. Of course, Annie, she's probably not the sharpest knife in the box because as they're driving along and they're after smoking a joint, she sees her father on the side of the street. Her father, who I mentioned earlier, is the sheriff, the local sheriff, and he waves them over. So they pull up alongside him, and they're both trying to, like, you know, get the fucking smell of smoke out of the car. And because, you know, daddy's a cop and he's probably not going to be too happy about them smoking a wee joint in the car. But he's like not a very good cop because he doesn't seem to smell or notice anything when he leans in and has a little chat with them. So apparently the reason he's there is because there's been a break-in at the local hardware store, and some odd items have gone missing, like you know, a Halloween mask and a bunch of other kind of blunt instruments have been taken from this hardware store. So Annie and Laurie, they drive off. They're just happy to get out of there and glad they weren't rumbled for smoking some weed. And just as they pull off, we see Dr. Loomis pull up, and he goes over and he introduces himself to the sheriff, and he explains to him why he's there and tells him about Michael Myers. And as he's telling him about Michael Myers, we see in the background that Michael Myers has been sitting in his car the whole time watching from across the street, and he just kind of drives off and drives past Dr. Loomis and the sheriff, and they don't even notice.
He's doing
And
quite a bit of driving. I hope he fueled up so he doesn't run out of fuel doing all this driving this Myers
yeah,
film.
he either had to fuel up or he had to start you know, Grand Theft Auto in a
Yeah.
lot that day, and he happened to just pick up the same car each time. They were spawning the same type of car in the area he was
Maybe it was
stalking. So
siphoning fuel in between scenes.
So yeah, we cut back to Annie and Laurie in the car, and they're relieved. Obviously, they weren't stung for smoking a bit of weed. And Annie, she's kind of pushing Laurie a little bit more, asking her, why she doesn't have a boyfriend and why she doesn't want to go to the dance. And Laurie confesses that look, she would like to go to the dance. She just doesn't have the guts basically to ask a boy to go with her. And she tells Annie the name of the boy, the local boy in school that she fancies. And of course, this prompts Annie to start making fun of her again, like any good friend would, just continuously pick at her and make her feel like a piece of shit. But so yeah, the two girls they have their banter, and all of a sudden it's now nightfall. Halloween is upon us, and we see that the sheriff has brought Dr. Loomis to the old Myers house, which has long been boarded up. It was never sold on after the incident that happened. And the two of them, they go into the house. It's obviously very dark, very dim, no electricity, and they're walking around investigating, and they come across the body of a dog. And the sheriff kind of goes over and investigates, and he's like, "Oh, it's still warm." And Loomis makes the kind of very dry remark that, "Oh, Michael, he must have gotten hungry." And the sheriff's like, "What are you talking about? The dog was probably attacked by a skunk or another wild animal. Like, there's no way a man could do that to a dog." And Loomis is like, "Oh, this ain't no man we're dealing with." So Loomis, he's very freaked out, and there's a moment where a bit of old guttering from the house kind of breaks off and hits the window, and Loomis is so startled that he actually draws his gun, and which of course also draws the attention of the sheriff. He's kind of like, "What are you going around packing this like hand cannon in your trench coat for?" And Loomis is like, "Oh, look, I have a license for it, and believe me, when you're dealing with Michael Myers, you're going to need to be armed with something like this, essentially." So yeah, they investigate, and there is definitely evidence that Michael has been there and could possibly return again. Um, a side note on this I'll make, because I mentioned about the dog, and later on we're going to see some other kind of, or maybe not see, but there's going to be implied violence against another dog later on. It's one mark I have against Michael Myers is he's not very nice to animals, it would seem. So sorry, Michael. I could get bored with all the stalking and the murdering of people in your town, but when it comes to animals, I just I can't condone it.
Definitely not.
That's a bridge too far, Michael. You've gone too far this time. So yeah, we see Laurie here. She's babysitting Tommy, and they're reading comic books, and Tommy's asking her about the boogeyman, and he said that the kids were making fun of him earlier and saying that the boogeyman was going to get him, and she's trying to tell him not to worry about what the other kids think, and that the the boogeyman is just something that's made up to scare children, and on a night like Halloween, it's just all about people trying to scare each other, and it's nothing to be worried about and nothing to take too seriously. And of course, they're also watching a movie as they're sitting on the sofa. What movie are they watching, Johnny?
Oh, is it the Thing, like the original?
It is.
Not the
It
Carpenter, but
is.
the original film.
That's right. It's the Howard Hawks version of the
Yeah, that's
Thing
right.
that they're
Howard
watching
Hawks.
on
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. There. Yeah, it's on there.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool
And
that
it's so
they're.
scary. It made one of the images de-interlace and go all crackly there, like
Yeah,
Twilight Zone or something.
it's pretty cool seeing that John Carpenter would actually copy that logo for the
Yeah, I love
remake
that
later
logo.
on as well. Don't worry, folks. We're going to get to that one by the month's end as well. So yeah, Laurie, she's telling Tommy basically not to worry, not to get upset about
Yeah.
what the
Quick
kids
look
are
at that logo
saying.
right there.
Oh, little preview,
Yeah.
little preview of what's coming. And we see as well Annie. She's been babysitting herself at a different house, and of course Michael Myers. He's got this street really well staked out. Like he knows the two houses that the girls are babysitting in tonight, and he's been going around all day, pretty much getting things ready for what's about to happen this evening. So Annie, she has a bit of an incident where her kiddo like they spill something on her clothes, so she has to change out of her clothes. So she finds like a shirt that the man of the house owns. She pops that on over her underwear, and she goes outside um to their kind of like outdoor shed place thing where they keep their washer and dryer so she can do her laundry. And as she's loading all the stuff into the washer and she goes to leave, she realizes she's locked herself in. The door is closed and she can't get off. She can't get the latch up. So the little kid is that she's babysitting. She's also watching TV herself and also watching The Thing. So she doesn't notice for a while that Annie's actually been gone for quite some time. And it's not until the phone rings and when she picks up the phone, it's Laurie and she's asking where Annie is. So the little kid goes and she finds Annie locked in the shed, and she lets her out and they both go back inside. And Annie, she's pretty pissed off. We get, of course, what we absolutely love on this show. We get some great phone acting as
Yeah,
Annie
but
and
phone
Laurie
acting.
have a chit chat on the phone, and Annie's basically telling her that she's ruined her outfit and she's basically having to wear the owner of the house's duds. And he's like, "Look, I'm coming over to you, and I'm bringing the kids, with us, and you can do that whole deal where you can mind them like we arranged earlier on." So
I
Annie,
got
she
locked
she
up and I couldn't
convinces
get out. I'll get off. So you get over here now. I've been unlocked again.
exactly, and so look, she scoops up her wee kiddo that she's babysitting, and brings her over to where Laurie is. Of course, the whole time all of this has been going on, they've been watched by Michael. He's watching the comings and goings from the different houses, and we get to see some more chit chat here between Annie and Laurie. Laurie's just not totally pleased with the fact that she's kind of babysitting somebody else's kid, and they've got a kid around in the house that's not supposed to be there, even though the two kids themselves are actually delighted. They're both sitting watching horror movies together and eating popcorn and having a great time. So it's working out really well for them this Halloween night. Though shit's gonna get pretty bad shortly from now, and these kids are gonna have a night that they're never going to forget.
Oh, night to remember. It's all
Night to
good fun.
remember. The night he came home. So yeah, Annie, she nips over back across the road to get a few bits and pieces from the house she was in, and she's gathering up her bits. She goes to get into her car, which is parked in the garage, and of course we once again get that urban legends type of deal where the lady, she's sitting in the front seat, she's about to start the car. Next thing, from behind, Michael Myers appears, does the grab, does the stab. He gets her across the throat with the knife, and that's the end of poor Annie killed in the car. And of course we see the windows all steaming up with each of their breath. As this is going on. Great that scene that Annie has here in the car, because there's a real struggle with the hand going against
Yeah,
the window, and we get to see a little bit of the viciousness of Michael Myers and
and
what
he's
he's
always
capable of.
silent. I mean, we haven't kind of mentioned that, but he's always like this silent killer who you can't hear him coming. He doesn't make a noise. He doesn't talk to you.
Yeah, at the very most, you might get to hear like a bit of low breathing. That's about the
Yeah, a bit
height
of
of
a
it.
breath.
So yeah, poor Annie, she's bit the dust, and nobody's any the wiser. But Laurie, she's getting a bit kind of weirded out because she's still minding the two kids. The night's kind of rolling on, and Annie never came back. Um, to get to pick up the kids. So she's starting to get a bit concerned. She makes a phone call to the house, but nobody's picking up. So she's also continuously kind of pacing and watching out the window to see if Annie will come back. So not a good night for Laurie.
No.
And it's about to get a whole lot worse. And I forget, is it like, it might be like Lost in Space, or there's another movie that another kind of classic sci-fi that they're watching on the TV. I don't know if you have it on your cheat sheet. I kind of forgot what it is, but
Yeah, I'm
the
not
kids
sure what the other one is.
kids are having a great time though. They're having an absolute ball. And we cut back to the exterior of the Myers house, and we see there's kids trying to dare each other to go up to the
That is the
house
one I
and run
thought.
inside.
But when you
And
said classic sci-fi, I genuinely didn't know which one it was, but I thought, I wonder if it's the one with Leslie Nielsen, Forbidden Planet, 1956.
there you go. There you go. So yeah, the kids, they're trying to dare each other to go up to the Myers house, but then Donald Pleasance kind of shouts at them from the bushes and scares them off. And the sheriff, who's still hanging around, he's like, "Look, why are you still hanging around here? Like, this guy, he may or may not have been here. We don't know who killed that dog, but look, if he was here, he's not coming back. There's really no reason to be kind of roaming the streets and looking for him." And Dr. Loomis, he's like, "Look, I wish you were right, but I don't think you are. And if this guy shows up, you're really going to, you're going to know about it. There's going to be big trouble if
I,
I'm
I
right
love
about
how
this." So
these small town sheriffs, and it's become like a cliche since, but they're always so sure of themselves, even though it's like this first time thing where it's like we've got someone who's a potential stalker, or we don't yet know he's a killer, but he's a stalker or a weirdo. It's just like, oh no, I know everything, even though I haven't met this person, haven't really investigated anything. I'm so sure of my conclusions immediately.
of course we see Lindsay and her boyfriend pulling up at the house that Annie was supposed to meet them at, and they're just two horny teens. They're dying for the ride, and Lindsay's she's boozing. Of course, it's totally acceptable to drink and drive back in the 70s. The dude's having a couple of beers as well. Um,
A bit of
they get
weed
out
while
of
you're
the
driving, I
car.
guess.
They go into the house, but they can't find Annie, which is because she's dead in a car in the garage. So that's why they can't find her. But instead of kind of being worried or concerned that Annie and the child aren't in the house, they instead just decide to go straight upstairs and to get the business and get humping and pumping, as it were. So we cut back to Laurie, and at this point she's getting really bothered. She's been continuously ringing the phone in the other house, and nobody's picking up. So she's been carving a jack-o'-lantern with the kids, and she's basically like, "Look, uh, you two should be fine here for the moment. Just stay watching TV. I'm going to head down the street and just see what Annie is up to, and basically check out what's going on." So yeah, she decides just to head down the street and check it out. And of course, this is the film, another quickie of quickies, because we cut back to the house, and Lindsay and her dude have already done the business. And Lindsay, she seems a lot more satisfied than Mike's sister was earlier at the start of the film. She's smoking a cigarette. Looks like she's had a good time. So she sends the boyfriend downstairs to get them a couple of beers. And as he's down there, he hears a rummaging kind of coming from this cupboard door, and he goes to open the door. And as he does, Michael Myers comes out, puts his hand over his throat, starts pretty much like just crushing his larynx, shoves him up against the wall. The guy can't even like choke out a scream. He's getting squeezed so hard, and Michael Myers like just one-handed lifts him up against the wall, and then with the other hand, knife straight in the heart,
Oh, it's
and
nasty.
skewers the guy. And we get the visual of the dude's feet kind of dangling, kicking briefly, and then kind of relaxing essentially as he's just left kind of stuck dangling there after being skewered by Michael Myers. And it's another example of like Michael's kind of like silent efficiency. Like he just comes through and like the deed is done before you can almost even think about it. Like that dude is dead. So
It's very
we
dead.
cut back upstairs to Lindsay, and she's doing her nails. She's lying on the bed doing her nails, and as she looks up, she sees a person with a sheet over them, pretending to be a ghost standing in the doorway. And we see it has her boyfriend's glasses over the sheet, so she assumes that it's him
That's
trying
Jerry
to be
O'Connell from
funny,
Scream, I'm sure of it.
trying to play a prank on her. So she's like, oh, and she takes the blankets down and flashes the bats, and she's like, oh, do you see anything you like? And of course the ghost is just standing there, not making any noise, not saying anything, not reacting. So Lindsay, she's starting to get pretty annoyed. So she gets up out of bed, she starts getting dressed, and she decides to call Laurie on the phone. Um, and as she's calling her, we see behind her that Michael removes the white sheet that he was wearing, and walks up calmly behind her and begins to strangle and stab her. And as all of this is going on, Laurie is on the other end of the phone thinking that Lindsay is just messing with her. They're just trying to freak her out. This is more of them just kind of teasing her and making fun of her. And I suppose she hears what she also thinks could possibly be sex sounds as well, as there's a bit of a struggle kind of going on in the background. But we see after Michael Myers has, unalived Lindsay, he picks up the phone and he listens to Laurie on the other end of the phone, and we can actually hear his deep breathing. And Laurie also hears the deep breathing, and she hangs up the phone. And in fairness to her, she's pretty brave. She decides to go over there and check out what's going on in the house because she wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. She wants to know, where's Annie, where's Lindsay, what's going on? Am I stuck minding this kid for the rest of the night, or are you going to take him back over there? Parents are probably going to be home soon. What the hell is going on? It's also around this time that Dr. Loomis, who has been kind of vigilantly guarding the Myers house, decides to start walking down the street towards where the other houses are, just in case he comes across Michael Myers, and just in case that the sheriff is in fact right and that he's not going to come back to the Myers house anytime soon. So he takes himself off, and as this is going on, we see that Laurie, she's reached the house where Alice and Lindsay are supposed to be. She walks inside, she calls out, nobody answers. She's wandering around the house, looking for everybody, can't find anybody there. She's totally confused. So she heads down the street to the other house where the babysitting was supposed to be going on, the first house that we saw Alice at. Goes in there. We see there's a jack-o'-lantern on the balcony, just ominously lit up, even though the rest of the house is dark. And yeah, Laurie goes in and once again, she's calling out for her friends. Nobody's answering. And this house, it's not half as well lit as the one she just left. It's pretty dark and shadowy, and she's, yeah, just kind of wandering about in the dark, searching. And she's about to uh, she's about to get a little surprise here as she goes into this house and goes deeper into the house. So she goes upstairs first of all, and she's it's pretty spooky. We got the usual, we got the creaky floorboards. You can't see anything, but she can see that there is a light coming from one of the bedrooms, a dim light. And as she opens up the door, we get this shot of her friend Alice, who's been killed earlier on in the car, and she's just splayed out on the bed, almost kind of crucifixion style, with her arms open. And right above her at the head of the bed is the gravestone of Judith Myers, which had been removed from the
How
cemetery
convenient.
earlier on. Just just there, plant there. Really, really great work by Michael to set all that up. And
I think there are a lot of skills in the spare time. He's
oh
driving and
yeah,
he's weightlifting these stone blocks and crucifying people.
strong as an ox. And of course, Laurie totally freaks out, goes to leg it out of the house, stumbles across the body of the dead boyfriend. This freaks her out even more. And yeah, she's totally dunging it. And as she's freaking out downstairs in the house, Michael, he emerges from the shadows, and she narrowly avoids getting got. She's very close to meeting her end, but she manages to escape and run screaming out of the house. And she's running down the street, she's banging on doors, she's screaming at the top of her lungs. There's even a moment where she runs up to a neighbor's house and she's like banging on the door, and we see the lights turn on, and like two people look out the window and let's close the curtains again and turn the lights off, like, so
As you would if
maybe
there's
not.
some maniac running around who's possibly going to attack you.
But that's the thing. All you see is, like, if you just see a little girl or like a young girl at the door, you'd think you'd at least like open the window and be like, "What's going on?" Like at least ask the question. But I don't know. These folks, they don't want anything to do with what's going on. So eventually, Laurie, she runs down the street, and she goes back into the house where she was, and she tells the two kids, "Go on upstairs, lock yourself in the bedroom." And she's going to try and phone the police. So she goes back downstairs, tries to dial the cops. From what I recall, the phone not working, it's not dialing. So she's sitting on the couch, she's freaking out, and all of a sudden she notices that the window of the living room is wide open, and the wind is blowing in, which has kind of freaked her out a little bit. And she grabs she arms herself and goes to investigate, closes the window, and then just goes to investigate around the house in case somebody has entered. We also see here once again out in the street, Dr. Loomis. He's walking the beat. He's trying to see if he can spot a Michael Myers in the wild. And once again, the sheriff pulls up and he's like, "Why are you still here? Go home, go
Got
back to
nowhere else to
wherever you're
go.
supposed to
Got
be."
fired on a board.
Of course, the poor sheriff doesn't realize at this stage that his own daughter has been a victim of Michael Myers. That's the tragic irony of what's going on here. If the sheriff had been taking things a little bit more seriously from the get-go, he might
Yep.
not have even let his daughters leave the house that night.
Didn't learn nothing from that sheriff of Nightmare on Elm Street. They just none of them seem to communicate or learn from each other's scenarios whatsoever.
We see here that Michael, he had in fact gotten into the house. Laurie, she kind of stabs him with a sewing needle, which looks pretty painful. Like it goes like right into the side of his head.
Yeah.
But of course, he's like an unfeeling man of granite, so he's able to get up from that. And Laurie, she's totally freaking, totally like running around screaming. She gets the kids, she puts them into one of the other rooms and like basically puts them out the window and's like, get out of the house. Run into Mrs. and Mr. So and so's house and tell them to call the police. So she manages to get the kids out of the house, and she goes to hide inside, I suppose, like what would be like a clothes kind of closet. And as she's hiding there, Michael Myers, he enters the bedroom and he's stalking around. And Laurie, she's trying to be as quiet as a mouse. She's fucking freaked out, though, as anybody would be. And she's there, she's on the ground, it's dark. And next thing, Michael Myers, he punches through the door, he starts breaking through all the wood, reaching in, kind of grabbing at her, and comes pretty close to getting her. He also like kind of accidentally activates the light in the closet when he's kind of grasping at the wiring and stuff. And yeah, he breaks through the door, tries to get her, but she manages to I think she stabs him again. With a bit of a clothes hanger, which buys her a little bit of time to get out of there. She's really good at grabbing things and stabbing. You know what? Like because she was quick to grab the sewing needle earlier on to kind of get the better of him, and then in the in the closet with the metal clothes hanger, she's pretty quick to improvise that into a weapon as well. So she manages to avoid him once again, and she stumbles out into the hallway just as Dr. Loomis, who'd seen the two children running out of the house, he is walking in. And just as Laurie comes down the stairs and she's screaming and she's crying, he looks behind her and can see Michael staggering out into the corridor, and he unloads with his 6-shooter and hits him quite a few times, bang, 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 bang. And Michael, he eats every one of those bullets, and he falls from the balcony of the house onto the ground. So he must be dead, surely. He got shot.
Oh, he's got to be there.
He's got to be dead. He's got to be dead.
He
Of
cannot
course,
come back for any sequels. That's the law. Once you're dead, you're dead. No, come back.
in the aftermath, Laurie, she's freaking out, and she makes the line of that was the boogeyman, and Dr. Loomis agrees with her, and he walks up the stairs and he looks out over the balcony where he shot Michael Myers from, and there's no body. The body is gone. He is not dead. He is still at large. But that's how the movie ends. And God damn it, what a movie it is. A fantastic film. I know, as usual, I probably haven't done it justice kind of running through it like that, but I'm doing this on the assumption that a lot of people have watched it or are familiar with the happenings of it. And of course, we would learn there is a sequel, Halloween 2, which picks up directly after the events of this movie, where we get to see the whole aftermath of Laurie going to the hospital and Michael Myers following her there, and all the chaos and horror that happens as a result of that. And I have to say, like Halloween 2, it's produced by John Carpenter. It's not directed by him, but he did have a big hand
Yeah,
in the
I think he has a
story. And
writing
it's
credit in it as well.
yeah, and like in my opinion, it's the best of all the sequels because it's so close, to the original. It's a really good sequel, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody to watch if you enjoyed the first movie, and maybe even someday, Johnny, maybe even next year we might
Yeah,
cover it on this channel.
we might as
But
well.
yeah, that was Halloween. What do you think? What do you think of the whole package in retrospect?
I think it's a very lean and mean movie that they accomplished a lot with a relatively small budget, and but you can't really tell that watching it. It's visually a good looking film, but the creative shortcuts and things they did a lot of work behind the scenes to make this work on a small budget and to make things look bit bigger and you know, more than what they were. But it's like when you read the kind of like production history of it, it's so impressive what they did on the smaller budget and all the little tricks they did that look great on screen that you wouldn't even really know, like you wouldn't know about unless you kind of looked it up or watched one of those DVD featurettes and that. And even like the famous thing now about the Shatner Halloween mask was like meant to be like just they didn't even have anything. They got it from like some Halloween actual mask, like cheap, mass produced thing because it was cheap, and just like
And it
painted it.
became such an iconic image, though, that white
Yeah,
mask. Michael Myers, though, he is efficient at what he does, and he ain't like Freddy Krueger or Pennywise. He's not going to have a little bit of a laugh and then kill you. Once he's decided that you're the next victim, it's usually over for you pretty quickly. Like I said earlier, he just goes for the combo. It's the grab and stab, the old 1-2, and that's it. You're dead. But yeah, the original
he's just like
Halloween.
he's you know he's all like silent and that, but he's like force of nature is the wrong word because he's human being. But he's like this unnatural psycho killer, whatever. But it's like you know, if I go to the beach and a wave comes and it just knocks you over and it keeps going, the wave doesn't care about you. It's just going to do what it does. And I feel like Michael Myers is just like a wave, just going to come along and smash into things. But you know, but in the sequels, we do learn a bit more about the family, like the family history and that sort of thing, and they connect up more things. But in the first one, we don't know a heck of a lot. We just know that he's a maniac and he's out there killing folks.
And in a lot of ways, we don't need to know it because as
No, we
it's
don't need to.
self-contained,
We need to.
as a
It definitely
self-contained
got
story, it's really
nonsense
good.
as they went on with the bloody. I looked up a thing the other day. Someone made someone for some film site or whatever years back made a flow chart of the different continuities and chronology of all the Halloween films. And there was, I think there was like 4 different continuities where, and it showed how this film connects to this one, it branches off, and these ones skip that and go to these other ones. And it's so crazy when you look at it.
And then, of course, yeah, like when it was rebooted, and then there were sequels, but there were sequels that ignored other sequels
Yeah,
and only focused on like
multiple sequels and reboots that ignore the other ones. It's crazy. And then we had the
it gets
Rob
quite
Zombie ones
murky.
as well.
But here, yeah, he's still in his most earliest, purest form. He's just a force of evil. I think what I love so much about this movie is that most of the movie is actually just a build up to what happens that night. Like
Yeah, it is. It is.
you see
It could
him
almost be
briefly
like
as
an
a
extended
child.
episode of a Twilight Zone or something, you know, like
Yeah.
it's got that kind of feel to it.
And it just, yeah, because I would say probably, obviously you get the little bit of murder and mayhem at the beginning of the movie, but after that, it's probably about like 40-45 minutes of just like build up, build up, build up. You're watching him, watching everybody else, and you're just kind of
Yeah,
waiting for him to strike. It really works,
yeah.
though. It really
It's
works.
funny. Earlier on, we are talking about urban legends and the boogeyman. I've watched too much wrestling in the last year. Anytime I hear that phrase now, all I can think is the boogie woogie man. It's
Boogie
coming to
Woogie
get me.
Man.
When I hear it, I'm like,
It's
no,
the
the boogie
Boogie
woogie
Woogie.
man's coming to get me.
At least he didn't think of the other boogeyman, the guy who eats the worms from like the mid 2000s. We
Yeah,
not to be mistaken with that guy.
definitely not.
The Boogie Woogie Man.
Always
So
wiggling around strangely.
which one of JC's awesome works are we looking at next week?
Well, yes. Well, next week we'll be doing the background as a hint. It's a movie where hang on, where is it? Okay, click that one. Sorry, I clicked it, it loaded it, but it just didn't pop up. It's the movie where we get to enjoy quite a few pints and a bit of fog.
Oh yeah, I love this movie, and spoiler, folks, I like it better than Halloween.
All
Hey,
right, I like
just
it
put
better than
that out there.
Halloween too.
Yeah, and I love Halloween, and I do love Halloween, but I really love the fog. And
Yeah,
as Johnny mentioned earlier,
one,
we're going to get to see the Catwoman herself in action.
yeah,
Going to get to
and
see some great
one of my
phone acting.
one of the things I love about the fog is actually the fog, and I don't mean like the ghost dudes. I mean just the fog itself is like used so well on the thing, makes me think like Silent Hill and all that, where it's all just rolling into town. And I did used to live out in country towns sometimes where we had like, I've been out in fog that's literally so thick, if you hold your hand in front of your face, you can't even see your finger, and it's like, whoa! It's like I love that sort of fog.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really looking forward to chatting about this one, and our John Carpenter Odyssey will roll on. And of
Yes.
course, folks, I will plug previous episodes as well if you are interested. We did cover Escape from New York, and we've also covered They Live. So if you like
Yeah.
John Carpenter and if you like listening to two lads chatting about him, by all means, check out our
I
previous
better add that
episode.
in. There is a feature on bloody YouTube where you can go, as the video ends, you can go recommend this thing, and most times can't be fucked with it. But I'll make a point of putting it in so it'll bring up. So if anyone watches to the end, it'll bring up automatically. It'll bring up like those other ones we just mentioned.
You hear that, folks? You watch to the end. You better
that's
watch
that's
to the
the
end.
that's the flaw in the feature. It only pops up in the last 20 seconds, so it doesn't. So it's like it's because you know the autoplay thing on YouTube. That's why they have it, so it can autoplay on the. But I always turn autoplay off because I hate it. Because I'll go to bed listening to Jim Cornette podcast, and then I wake up listening to bloody who's the dude? He's all
Dave
the other
Meltzer.
yeah, of Dave Meltzer or the other guy, Pritchard. One of those will pop up, like, and
Yeah.
we'll go onto one of their shows. And I don't want to hear this. It's a problem with the autoplay giving you similar things, but it might be the competition or one I don't want to listen to.
I don't want to hear your propaganda, Bruce Pritchard.
No, he's company man. The definition of company man. Everything's
Jim
good, nothing's
Cornette.
ever bad.
Jim
You
Cornette's
could
another
probably go to the
JC.
shop, go to Disneyland and buy like Bruce Pritchard goggles or something, and the whole world is just like rainbows and unicorns and nothing's ever bad.
Oh yeah, but that will be another a wrestling topic to discuss. Some of
Yeah.
the exploits of Bruce Pritchard, brother love himself.
I love you.
I love you.
I want to punch you, Bruce Pritchard.
I'll punch you in your big red face.
It's got a face you just want to punch. But yeah, that's it for this week's one. We'll be back next week with the fog, and after that, we've got a couple more. We'll be doing Prince of Darkness and the thing in subsequent weeks. But thanks for checking this out.
Take care, folks. Stay spooky. See you next time.